After nearly 2.5 years of conflict, I like to think I'm kind of desensitized to all the horrible things that can happen in war. But sometimes even I get thrown for a loop by Russia's cruelty. According to reports that we've just received, Putin has targeted a valuable military target, a children's cancer hospital in Kiev. Yeah, no kidding. We're going to break down this story. Here, let's get into it. Okay, so this I initially thought was like a propaganda because this is like comically, ghoulishly bad. But no, Russia has actually targeted a Kiev children's hospital for an attack. And based on some of the pictures, I'm not going to dwell on them because YouTube will demonetize me. And if you're not familiar with my war against YouTube demonetization, essentially it goes like this. YouTube hates war content. It's an election year, and frankly, the Ukraine war isn't a very popular topic to talk about. The only problem is it's still going on, and someone has to cover this news. So YouTube's policies basically have prohibited me from showing any scenes of combat or any destruction. And of course, sponsors really don't want to touch me. That's why I depend on you guys, right? That's why I launched Combat Vet News. This is my version of Patreon. All it is a chance for me to put all the uncensored combat footage that I do analysis on. All of that goes here. And twice a week, we look at the viral combat footage from the front lines. Sometimes it's as little as 48 hours old. We do a deep dive analysis into the tactics, but also we've rolled out new benefits. So if you're a specialist, you'll get access to those members only uncensored videos. But if you're a lieutenant tier and you want to really support the channel and get access to the shout outs at the end of videos and the weekly Q&A that we're doing, or if you really, really want to support the channel, of course, you can become a colonel tier and get those by name recognitions in addition to being able to submit questions to the weekly Q&A. So thanks to all you guys that have become members. Literally, you are sustaining this channel. There is nothing else. But that enables me to talk about some of these really controversial things like Putin hitting this children's hospital. Now, looking at the pictures, the hospital, it's not clear. According to the mayor, right, and some of the emergency the head of the presidential office, he said, quote, "I cannot say for certain whether it was a missile or debris that hit the hospital, but considering the scale of destruction, it's unlikely that it was a fragment from debris." And this is true. We're talking about an entire wing of the hospital that appears to be destroyed and burning, with 31 is the current count of Ukrainians who've been injured in this attack. And this is part of a larger barrage of Russian missiles targeting Ukrainian sites. And generally, the way this seems to be working is that Putin just sort of launches these missiles at major urban areas and doesn't really care how and who they hit. There's purportedly it was a Kinzhal missile, according to some rumors. And there's a discussion that Russia, the Kinzhals are kind of weird weapons for a bunch of reasons. First off, Russia only makes about 4 of the things a month. Because of the sanctions, they make it really hard to get the kind of sophisticated materials and avionics that they need to really give them the guidance they need. But more so, Russia also has a hard time getting them accurate onto their target. China itself, who's looking carefully at producing their own Kinzhals, is basically saying, hey, these things suck. These are terrible. And yet Russia continues to use them, even though all they're good for is terror weapons, right? Weapons that are meant to target just general areas, right? Areas as large as a city. So you can see here within the city of Kiev, right? You could see that the hospital itself is not really close to anything. Nothing of military significance, right? It's kind of in the downtown, but you could see that it's adjacent to an empty park. But what there isn't, you notice, there's no government buildings. There's like a university. There's a Georgian restaurant. There's an endocrine, like it's a whole medical campus here, a park. Where's the military target, right? Even if your weapon system sucks, are you going after the Georgian restaurant or the Chinese place or a cake? Oh, they went after the honey confectionery. Watch out, guys. What's even stranger to me is that you hit this hospital, sure, right? You're already kind of a piece of dirt. But look at what was right next to the hospital. The Embassy of Finland, the Embassy of Korea, right? So you effectively had a kind of embassy row here. And that is really kind of disturbing because it shows that Russia may have been sending a message, right? It may have even been to send a message to the Republic of Korea, which, as you know, is discussing fairly extensively whether they want to provide military aid to Ukraine, in part because the North is now supporting Russia. But again, targeting embassies, targeting hospitals, especially hospitals that treat kids. I don't know if you knew this, but they don't have kids fight on the front line, and they definitely don't have kids fighting with cancer on the front line. So it's not a military target. You could, if you like squint your eyes, right, you could argue that some of the hospitals in Kiev that like provide rehab to soldiers who've been wounded, maybe they're like a military-ish target. Government buildings, maybe, sure. But again, a children's hospital, embassies, a pizza shop, that's just Putin being an asshole. I don't know how else to put it. And more than an asshole, it's committing a war crime, right? And remember, a war crime, you don't have to sit there and circle the Children's Cancer Hospital, which is still insane to me. And so we want to target that. It could be a war crime if you just have reckless disregard. If you're like, listen, there's no reasonable way these missile strikes are going to hit meaningful targets, right? Meaningful military targets. And we know that the key governmental functions of Ukraine have been moved to Lviv, right? So there's a very limited set of targets in Kiev. That's kind of the point of relocating the government, is to ensure the largest, most populous centers remain relatively free of potential military targets, right? And so the fact is that Russia's looking at this and going, we still want to push into Kiev, we still want to launch these attacks, is to me emblematic of what you would call gross negligence, right? Putin just not caring that there's no military targets, not caring that it's highly likely to hit civilians, not caring that it's between an embassy and a children's cancer hospital, just not caring, just being like, F it, send it. And the fact that he only has a couple of these missiles a month that he can use, and he's still choosing to use them on major cities, says to me that the targeting civilians is the point, right? It's not an accidental effect. It's an intentional act that he's embarking on in order to terrorize and intimidate the Ukrainian population. But of course, if he studied history, which he claims to, but he never seems to really do, he would know that in history, when you terrorize a population like this, it takes the war from being something that is happening elsewhere, and it makes it personal. And human beings tend to take being threatened very, very personally. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to the Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News like Martin Baum, Gregory Pace, Stuart Abel, Daniel Brown, James Ola, Chris Holmes, and Chris Gorshitz, as well as all the Lieutenant tier folks. I really couldn't do this without you guys. Check the link in the description if you want to come check out combatvetnews.com. And the new video is dropping tomorrow, so you absolutely want to be at ground zero for it. Thanks again. Cheers.